Welcome. You're listening to Resilience Radio, Episode 5 with Wendy Halley. I'm Irvin Eisenberg, host of the show and owner of Resilience Occupational Therapy. The opinions on this show, as always, are not necessarily shared by me. I like to showcase a variety of different practitioners from different backgrounds, and everyone has their own individual health care needs and their own different individual philosophy. Not every practitioner is going to resonate with every listener. So take what works for you and disregard the rest. Additionally, please do not use any of the opinions on this show as medical advice for diagnostics or prescriptive. You should really be seeking your own healthcare practitioner for that. So today's guest is Wendy Halley. She's a licensed mental health clinician, a longtime shamanic practitioner, and owner of Lucid Path Wellness, both the clinic in Montpelier and the podcast. Thanks for coming on the show today, Wendy.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I thought we'd just jump right in, Wendy. What do you mean when you say you're a shaman?
Well, actually, I wouldn't call myself a shaman. I do shamanic healing techniques, but how I kind of look at that is I believe that it's become a word that we use to describe people who have these or have this ability to basically travel from this reality, this physical reality where you and I are having a conversation, to a different reality, which is referred to as the dream time or the spirit world or non-ordinary reality, by way of altering their consciousness, and then connecting with helping spirits, which is kind of a strange concept for a lot of us. And that those helping spirits actually do healing work or give information. And so to me, the title shaman, which we all have it's kind of a mainstream word we use now to describe someone who does this, is something that should be earned. So the members of your community should be the ones who would call you a shaman if you've demonstrated the ability or the skills of a shaman. But I would just refer to myself as a shamanic practitioner or someone who does shamanic healing techniques. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I get that. So could you elaborate a little bit on where the term comes from and how it might be a little different from sort of the stereotypes people might imagine?
Well, it's become this sort of mainstream word that we all use to describe someone who has the ability to intentionally alter their consciousness and travel from this reality to this other reality I was referring to. I'm not a scholar on all of this, but my understanding is that shaman is I believe a Siberian word, and people who have do this type of work have been called different things in different cultures: medicine men, medicine women, priests, holy people, which seems like a pretty lofty title. I'm trying to think of other I already said priests and priestesses. You can edit that part out if you want. Yeah, so you get the idea that there's lots of different words, but just now with the resurgence of shamanism in Western culture, thanks to Michael Harner, who wrote the book The Way of the Shaman back in, I think it was the 70s or early 80s. I can't remember the publication date, but he was an anthropologist, and he brought the practice of shamanism into sort of the cultural awareness of Westerners, and it just sort of took off from there.
Okay. And do you ever worry that it sounds like it's a generic term that's used for people that covers a lot of bases? What do you think the common thread, at least in particular as it pertains to the work you do and what you find important, that is encompassed in a shamanic practice and shamanic work?
I don't know if I understand the question. I want to make sure I understand it. So you're wanting to know what the common thread is with shamanic cultures?
Well, when you use the term as a shamanic practitioner
Hmm.
in the work you do, what are the sort of the cores of what you do, and that might be showing up across cultures, or at least in shamanism in terms of your use? How would you be defining its unique practice?
The shamanism in and of itself is kind of just an intense form of meditation. It's highly visual and can be highly entertaining as well. So the practice itself is, you could say, it's kind of more of a technology. And universally, what's practiced is this meditation piece, this piece of going into an altered state and traveling from this world to the other world that I was telling you about earlier. And how different cultures go about, or different tribal people or indigenous people go about getting into this altered state, varies from region to region. You may be familiar with plant medicines being used, hallucinogenic, they might say, plant medicines, like ayahuasca or peyote or iboga. That's one way to get into an altered state. Other cultures use breathing techniques. Some use fasting. I use sound. That's the safest, easiest way. It's a very repetitive rhythm, usually played with a drum or a rattle. Uh, so that's a common thread, that there's some method that's being used to alter the consciousness. And then another common kind of universal theme with shamanism is it's all about one's relationship with power, personal power. So from this perspective, I frequently say, if you've been on the planet more than a couple of weeks, you start losing power. I think we give it away to people unconsciously. We lose it because of things that happen to us. So by the time we're adults, I think we all have varying degrees of power loss. So a shamanic healing practice, like I do, is really based on helping to reconnect people with their personal power so that they can have that agency to live their lives the way they would like. It maybe in a more authentic way. I think that's what a lot of us are striving for. And that power can come in the form of a lot of different things. So shamanism is really, when a practitioner is in this altered state, in essence, they're dreaming while they're awake. So they're accessing the symbolic realm. And so, for example, when I'm in an altered state, and this is going to sound dramatic, I end up perceiving the landscape of someone's soul or their essence. And it's complex. There's lots of layers to it. And underneath the layers is the truth about that person. And to me, the layers represent all the bullshit they've come to believe about themselves throughout their lives. And so the healing is about peeling back those layers so that the truth can emerge. So whatever the focus of a healing session is, and again, I'm just talking from my practice and my perspective. Every practitioner is different, so they're going to operate differently. Whatever the focus of the healing session is, we ask that layer to rise to the surface, and then me and my invisible friends, my spirit helpers, whatever you want to call them, they're archetypal spirits, will step into that narrative and start interacting directly with it. And so because I'm dreaming, I will perceive this narrative as a story playing out symbolically. And so I might see symbols that represent negative belief systems or emotional stuckness or trauma. And then my helping spirits, I'm not doing anything other than bringing someone's request for healing from this world to that world, and then my helping spirits take over and they do the work, and I'm just witnessing so I can report back to the client what just happened in the session. So my helping spirits do their thing, and that usually involves removing symbols that don't serve that person, and then reconnecting that person with power. And that power comes in the form of, you might have heard of animal spirits or totem animals. Other nature spirits will come forward to serve as sources of power and will give that person's gifts that they can work with.
One of the things that I hear you saying is you're talking about giving up power by being in the world, being born and interacting in the world. And then you were talking about sort of the layers of things that on the soul. Is that the same thing? The sort of the shit, the baggage on top of layered on top of the soul, is that masking the power in the paradigm you're discussing?
Well, I would say that the layers of narratives that are playing out within someone are kind of embedded in the unconscious, which is to me an aspect of someone's soul or spirit or what. I mean, I use those words kind of interchangeably, and they are kind of blocking the true or authentic self from expressing itself. So, for example, if somebody has really low self-worth, and that narrative that's playing out is going to prevent their true self from expressing itself, because the message of low self-worth is going to override the truth, right? Does that make sense?
I think so,
I
yeah.
mean, we when we're coming up, we're getting all of these messages from the people who are raising us, the world around us, about who we are, how we fit in the world, and we're trying to make sense of it, right? And so we come up with ideas which become beliefs about who we are, and then those kind of those take on, from the shamanic perspective, a story. They become a story that's playing out in your consciousness, basically in your subconscious or your unconscious, and they take up residence there, and they sort of run the show. And because they're unconscious, you don't realize just how much they're running the show. That's what's cool about a shamanic practice, is that it goes right to kind of the heart of stuff, whereas talk therapy, which is the other practice I have as a licensed mental health clinician, that focuses a lot more on your cognition around your thoughts, and trying to understand and gain insight into who you are and why you are the way you are, why you feel the way you do, behave the way you do, react the way you do. And it's brilliant for helping people gain insight and help them understand. But as far as creating really deep change, I think it's a little more challenging through just talk therapy to do that. Either that, or I'm a really shitty therapist. But comparatively, shamanic healing versus talk therapy is a big. There's a big difference there.
I feel like everyone finds their tools, and you've got I don't know if that's the correct analogy, but a couple different tool belts here to draw from. And I guess I want to back up a little bit. I feel like I may have jumped into some of the more by jumping straight into the word shaman to begin with, that we sort of bypassed a little bit of the history of the context of what brought you to this work is what I would like to hear about. So what brought you this line of work of shaman work, as well as being a mental health counselor and sort of your therapeutic practice in general?
Sure. So I started out in pursuing a career in psychology first, and I received a degree, a master's degree in clinical psychology out in California at a school called Pepperdine University. I was the token heathen there. and it was, there was something about going through graduate school that told me that, I kept feeling like there was something more a way to be of service in a bigger way, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And it was just a kind of a unsettled feeling. And then about 3 years after graduate school finished, and I was I had gotten my license and was practicing. At that time, I was living in Denver, Colorado. After having moved from, yeah, I've lived a bit of a gypsy lifestyle. I was in Arizona before Colorado. But anyway, in Colorado, I started having spontaneous visionary experiences, and I didn't quite know what to make of them, and I didn't really tell anybody about them because by Western psychological standards, I was delusional. I was seeing and hearing things that weren't there, and I was very much awake when I was having those experiences. And I I kind of put those to the side, those experiences, just kind of wrote them off as really cool, interesting, intriguing experiences. I only told one person about them. It was my current husband, John, and and just tucked him away. And then a whole series of really interesting and strange synchronicities happened, and I ended up studying uh, shamanism, this thing called shamanism. And I didn't even really know what it was. I didn't really understand it. I just found myself in this. What the story, how the story goes, is that I found myself in this center in Denver. I was looking for workshop space to rent, and I asked, "What do you do here?" And they said, "Oh, we have a shaman." And that should have been my first clue. Anybody who calls themselves a shaman, you probably should run the other direction. Anyway, I said, well, in an uncharacteristic way, I said, well, sign me up for a session. So I ended up actually working with the shaman's apprentice because I couldn't afford to meet with the shaman herself. And visionary experiences happened when I was working with that shaman. They just these spontaneous experiences happened. I didn't really understand them either. Um, and I ended up studying with the shaman there for a little bit, just learning how to alter my consciousness intentionally. And then later on, ended up studying with this guy named Hank Wesselman a couple years later, and he became the kind of the primary teacher, and he's that I've had, and he's the one who helped me make sense of all of those visionary experiences I was having, um, and kind of gave me a really nice foundation in in the Hawaiian tradition to help me kind of give me a framework for how to do this work. And then I just kind of took the ball and ran with it from there. And so, but I did it very much under the radar. I've kept my shamanic practice very separate from my clinical practice.
Okay, so I guess your clinical practice, can you give a little, can you elaborate on that a little bit more? You have your clinical practice, and then what does that look like, and what are the branches of the work you do?
Okay, so as a clinician, I focus primarily on I do what's called employee assistance program work, which is short-term solution-focused therapy, and it's really workplace focused. It's actually EAP work. If for people who aren't familiar with it, is a benefit that a lot of employers provide for their employees and the household members of the employees' household members as well. And what it offers is short-term counseling for free. And so that's the work I've been doing, and that includes a lot of workplace wellness focused workshops, and I facilitate discussions between employees who are struggling to get along. So that what I like about it is it's really varied, and I really have grown to like the short term focus, really getting in there very quickly and seeing what's up, and then offering referrals if they need to, continued assistance, or just kind of helping someone address whatever it is they have going on, if it can be handled within the scope of a few sessions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so and is that different than the your Lucid Path Wellness?
Lucid Path Wellness is the wellness center I opened here in Montpelier,
Mm-hmm.
coming 6 years ago now. How about them apples? I can't believe it's been 6 years.
It's
Just had
longer
to
than a lot of
stop there for a
businesses
second.
in Montpelier.
Well, knock on wood. Yeah, I'm thrilled that I'm still here. Lucid Path Wellness is I kind of have two business names. Lucid Path Wellness is the wellness center here, and then Lucid Path Healing Arts was the original business I started with my shamanic practice out of my house years ago. And then when I opened the wellness center here in Montpelier, I ended up combining two practices. So the wellness center is focused on a sound and light healing chamber that I invested in and brought here to Vermont after having really mind-blowing experiences. I felt obligated to find a way to bring this healing chamber here. It's called the Energy Genesis, and then come to find out that the shamanic healing goes really it complements the Energy Genesis sessions as well. So they go really well together.
So the Energy Genesis was something that actually developed. You developed that skill set working with that separately from the shamanic training.
Yeah, they're very different.
Okay. Could you describe like what the idea of stepping into a chamber can be an intimidating intimidating concept for many people. Could you
think so?
Yeah. What could people expect if someone was intrigued by this but a bit apprehensive? What's your description for them?
So it's basically it's an energy medicine device. It works on the frequency level, and the frequencies that it works with is sound and light, and the sound takes the form of music, and then there are these lights in the ceiling of the chamber or the vessel, whatever you want to call it, and they're just incandescent bulbs that are painted the colors of the spectrum, so you get this kind of full spectrum light frequency, and it's a huge vessel that's made of wood. So it's kind of, and you recline in it, and it's 360 degrees. It's like 9 feet in diameter. It's and it's got a lot of it's very big. It's actually 3,000 pounds. It's not like something I can take home with me, or it's not going anywhere. Anyway, you recline in it, and the light and the sound work together. It creates a resonance, and your body entrains to it. And pretty quickly, your body starts wanting to drop into very deep relaxation. It's actually more than relaxation. It's you go into a bit of an altered state as well. And what the research is showing is happening to you when you're in this vessel is that your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, is starting to reset and balance. And then your body goes into self-healing mode. So the vessel itself isn't doing anything other than creating an environment that's optimal for self-healing. So on the physical level, the emotional level, and then toxins also off gas from your cells when you're in there. So it works on the level of wanting to bring disharmony in your system into harmony through using light and sound. It's non-invasive. It's not close contact. It's quite a lovely experience. I'm a big fan.
It's really fascinating to me. I was just listening the other day to a follow-up podcast on a show called Radio Lab, and they were talking to somebody who was doing dementia training or dementia research. And it apparently, if you hit I think it's the delta waves, and they're doing it with mice, so whether or not it's transferable to humans is not known yet, but that apparently just by being exposed for like an hour a day to particular light frequencies and or sound frequencies, the dementia plaques were like 90% gone in people with in mice with advanced dementia, and their memories started to be able to return as well. So there's some
Beautiful. It's amazing, right?
yeah. So the idea of just light and sound and what it has the potential to do is fascinating and kind of bizarre to me.
Well, it is bizarre. It's totally bizarre. And nobody knows why this particular vessel works that I have. I think it has to do with the shape, the dimensions, and the material it's made from. It is kind of like being inside of a giant musical instrument, like a cello or a grand piano, and you resonate with the frequencies that are in there because it's contained.
So what's your recommendation for someone if they were interested in this? Is this a weekly thing, or how?
Well, I think it's great for your nervous system to get in there as much as possible, especially now that we have a lot of stress in the world. You can either do a series of sessions, that's kind of the recommended protocol that the inventor, after a bunch of research he did, decided was optimal for the nervous system, which is basically 3 sessions in 3 consecutive days. And so your nervous system gets that constant reminder each day with different music that kind of gets into different nooks and crannies in your system. It gets that constant reminder of calm and relaxation, and is able to really hold it for a longer period of time. And then your body processes those 3 sessions for about 3 weeks afterwards. Or you can just do a single session and get a taste of it, and that your body will process that session for about 3 days after you have it. So yeah, I mean, I have like a introductory special for people who just want to get in there and try it, see what it's like, because it is really strange. I mean, I get it. It's really hard to market too, because it's virtually impossible to describe the experience. There are no words to describe it. I can talk about the effects, but I can't say what it actually, because it's more than relaxation. It's because you're altered too. So time gets really weird when you're in there. It feels like you're in there for, most people say, like, God, it felt like 15 minutes, but it was actually 45 minutes.
So I will make sure to put in the show notes for listeners some basic information on how to get a hold of you on that and such, and for checking out that interesting experience, which I've been for a few years now meaning to reach out to you and try myself.
I'd love to have you come and try it.
So you got these 3 different aspects of your therapeutic life, and let me know if I've got that wrong and there's more clear aspects. So you've got this, the energy genesis vessel, you've got the shamanic work, and you have your therapy. So in what ways do they inform each other, and what ways do you keep them separate? Because it seems like you have some clear professional boundaries with them, but I can imagine that something that's a journey that's so personal to you is going to affect all of your work.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So clinically, I do work out of the wellness center I do all of the things out of the wellness center here in Montpelier. When I'm working with somebody clinically, like I said before, I keep that practice separate from my shamanic practice. Although a lot of people will Google my name and see that's what people do now, right? They Google, they get my name as a referral through the EAP or whatever. They'll Google it, and then they'll say, "Oh, she's a freak. She does shamanic work. I'm not going to go see her. I'll go to the other referral." Or they'll say, "Hey, that sounds cool. I'm going to go see Wendy." So it seems a lot of people know that that's part of who I am, but I don't talk about it unless somebody brings it up in a clinical setting. And as a As a clinician, though, I have to say that my practice is informed by my shamanic work, only because the way I see the nature of reality has changed so much over the years. And that sounds dramatic too, but it's true. I mean, you can't have a conversation with a tree and be the same after that. And I've had lots of conversations with lots of different archetypes, archetypal symbols out there. So, um, and I'm just not the same person as a result, and the way I see the world is not the same. So the way I see um, uh, somebody I'm working with in a clinical setting is I it's almost it sometimes it feels like cheating because I'll get an indication of what's going on with the person because of this perspective I have, um, and it's kind of like I guess you could say it's an impression that emerges in my consciousness just when I'm sitting with somebody. And if I have permission, when somebody's sitting with me, I feel like I have, I do have permission to start asking questions and getting, and then when I ask a question about what they're going through and I start getting all this information through their voice, through their facial expressions, their body language, I start getting this impression. Um, and the impression has gotten stronger and stronger over the years. And and it feels like it helps me get to the point of stuff really quickly. So doing this short term work is it comes in handy. It seems to work okay. I seem to have found a sort of a nice way to engage with that part of myself in a clinical setting that's safe, that doesn't, it's just information, basically. I guess
Yeah,
is
it's
the best way to put it.
yeah, these are the tools that you have. Like um, a good therapist should be able to use all their senses as to what's going on in whatever resources they have. Um,
Absolutely,
and
yeah,
and that's that's all you're doing. You're using what resources and perceptions you have with somebody to meet where they're at.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's how, I mean, that's how those two kind of intermingle. And then when I'm working, the difference between a shamanic session and, say, the energy genesis vessel, when I'm working with somebody shamanically, it's at the level of consciousness. And when somebody gets in the healing vessel, that's at the level of energy, because it's energy medicine, it's vibrational. And I see those two as very, very separate. They're different realities, which probably sounds really freaking strange, but that's how I see it.
So there's a few counselors or mental health practitioners of different types who I've considered having on the show before, and the tricky part is, especially in a small town and the very personal nature of the work, it's hard to ask straightforward questions about without any breach of confidentiality kind of thing.
Right, right.
So I guess, and if you can't answer this, I completely get it. You've sort of described your work as sort of freaky and sort of hard for people to understand, and that people can sort of get scared by or turned off by the strangeness of some aspects of your work. Do you have any interesting stories that you would feel okay sharing um, as to how someone may have had that initial response, but sort of how their perspective of your work has shifted over time?
I can't, I'm trying to think. I don't know if anything specific jumps into my head. Um, I guess what I could say is that that I think the way things are going. And one of the most common phrases I get from people who come for shamanic healing is, I've been in therapy for years and I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. And that's why I'm here. So it's kind of like I get people who are desperate
Hmm.
or frustrated. Um, and I totally get that. I think that there's also a level of openness that's happening too, that people are opening up to these alternative ways of looking at healing uh, because of that frustration. I mean, we have a high degree of people being prescribed antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, sleeping medications.
Hmm.
Oh, there's a lot more awareness of trauma and the impacts of trauma on the psyche, on physiology, and and um, and I think people are wanting to kind of dive into these other. I'm finding that people are more and more wanting to look for alternative ways to deal with this because they're tired of being in pain emotionally, physically. And so I also think that, like, shamanism in particular, it sort of it's in our DNA. I mean, we all, if we go back far enough in our ancestry, we all come from shamanic cultures. And so I think there's an appeal for those of us who can get over the strangeness of it. It's it's not strange if you go to and speak with indigenous people, because there's still practicing these ancient ways of looking at the world and healing. We Westerners are very far away from it, so it does seem strange. Like the idea of me talking about dreaming while I'm awake, it does sound delusional. It sounds wacky. And I have to say, as a clinician, I was embarrassed about my shamanic practice for a long, long time. It's taken me years to come to terms with the fact that it sounds batshit. I just can't get around it. Um, I get it, but I also, I mean, I've had so much direct experience at this point working with people and seeing the impacts of it that it's like, yeah, I, I, I was able to make some peace with it because just seeing somebody embrace their power and then run with it is, I mean, there's nothing that compares to that. It's what an incredible gift to be able to witness that. I feel very fortunate.
Hmm. Have you had any, since coming to terms with that, how have your conversations around shamanism differed with other healthcare practitioners, other mental health practitioners, before and after sort of your coming to terms with that?
My talking, you mean talking to other clinicians about this
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't really, I don't talk to,
That's it.
I don't. uh, no, I mean, yeah, I don't like to, I mean, I'm definitely a lot more out there now because I have the storefront on State Street, which is just amazingly, who I never would have guessed. Never, ever, ever in a million years that I'd have a storefront on State Street, a stone's throw away from the Capitol building. Um, yeah, I do try to keep that separate. Um, if a clinician approaches me because they've heard of it, then I'm more than happy to talk to them. And I have been getting more and more clinicians coming for healing work and for training, wanting to learn how to access these realms themselves. Um, so, like I said, I think more and more people are opening up to it, but I don't try to invite it. I don't instigate conversations with clinicians because, who wants to get that look? I don't want to get that look. I don't want, if I don't have to, I don't want to get that look. I'm rolling my eyes, but not really rolling my eyes. I don't.
Yeah. So, and I've sort of been jumping around here quite a bit, but I wanted to step into just stress management in general, because I think that might be an overlapping focus of yours and a theme that for stress management, and it seems to be a theme throughout all of these. Do you have any parting advice or recommendations for listeners around stress management?
Oh, other than that, it is vitally important, right? To to uh, to be able to take care of ourselves. Um, that one of the I'll just say a couple of things about stress. One of the things that inspired me to go into a great deal of debt and buy that healing vessel, the Energy Genesis, was that my first experience in that vessel, I had moments where I had a complete absence of mental, emotional, and physical tension, and it was delicious. And I'm a pretty chill girl, and to know that I was carrying that much stress in my body and I didn't even realize it until I had an absence of it. It really pointed out to me how much we are doing that to ourselves, how much we are carrying stress and we don't even realize it. So our baseline of stress can be very high, and it's just such a natural part of our interior experience that we don't even realize we're stressed until it spikes and we have some sort of a big stressful event or some kind of physiological symptom that says, "Oh man, I'm really stressed. Like I haven't been able to sleep for a week, or I have these killer migraines, or whatever." So that's a big reason why I got that chamber was first stress management, and it's totally cheating because your body wants to go when you're in there. Your body wants to go to that place. It just wants to. It's like so thankful to get to that place. And the other thing I'll say about stress is that uh, um, from a very kind of shamanic perspective, which is all about relationship, this kind of coming from this indigenous mind perspective, it's all about being in relationship with the natural world, your environment, your community, the people around you, yourself. And then if you have a shamanic practice, your allies, you have a relationship with those allies in the dream time. So your symptoms are there to get your attention. Their information. That's how I perceive it. And so, what is your stress trying to tell you? So, if you look at it from that perspective, like, all right, it's instead of trying to eradicate, I need to get rid of my stress. I think the stress has a story to tell. So, what is that story? And starting to, so in other words, developing a relationship with your stress, which is a very maybe a different sounding kind of way of looking at it. But that's a very shamanic perspective, and it works. What is making friends with your stress because it's there? It's trying to get your attention, usually through physiological symptoms. If you're paying attention to your body, and you're a body worker, so you know how that rolls. The body is brilliant at trying to get your attention. So yeah, that the idea of making friends with your stress rather than trying to get rid of it. Like, what is it trying to tell you?
Hmm.
And then when you listen to it, the stress can go away. It's like mission accomplished.
It just wanted to be heard a lot of the times and understood, it seems.
Yeah, and you could say it's there's a part of you that's trying to get your attention. That is feeling stressed.
Thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate a veteran podcaster like yourself being on the show in these early episodes.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
I enjoyed doing this interview, and I hope you enjoyed listening. If you did, please subscribe and leave a review on the podcatcher of your choice. You've been listening to Resilience Radio. Hope you enjoyed.